Hello everybody, welcome back to the Spider-Man life story vlog. Today's episode we'll be tackling issue 3, which is the issue dealing with the 1980s, entitled Our Secret Wars. Now this story is heavily inspired by two of the biggest, if not the biggest stories in the Spider-Man canon. One of them which we'll get on to later on in the episode, but the first one which I can tackle about because I think it's heavily implied in the cover, is that it deals with the symbiote, aka Venom. This is a plot line, a plot element, should I say, that is very popular and is one of a lot of fans' favourite storylines in the series. This story is also, as I've mentioned, tackles the 80s, which I think this episode is set within 1984, which chronologically makes this Spider-Man, I believe he's 37. This means, unlike the previous two issues, which are setting up this universe for a Spider-Man that lives outside of Marvel time, here we can finally start to experience it, because this is not a young Peter Parker now. This is a man. This is someone who has lived a bit. He has been Spider-Man for at least 20 years now, and so we get to see what that has a toll on our characters, and that is something which I've been dying. This is the reason why I got into this series. This is the reason why I was really looking forward to this, to see our characters age and develop in a way that we've never seen the Spider-Man canon play off like this before. I mean, we've had opportunities, especially when we come to live action Spider-Man, but I'm just going on a tangent here. So shall we get on to the issue in hand, shall we? Well, the story starts off with actually on a pretty good note in terms of writing, as we get to see MJ, who is pregnant, and she is actually about to give birth, but she's kind of stressing at the moment because Peter Parker has been missing for 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. And it's gotten to the point where in their relationships that this is kind of like a usual thing for them. And she's kind of having these doubts, her thoughts about their relationship. And it's like, how can this be like a normal thing? I'm here pregnant, looking after your auntie, your elderly auntie. It's also implied here that something isn't quite right with Aunt May. She seems to question where Peter is, and she doesn't seem to be in the right state of mind. And Mary Jane seems to be the one looking after her, whilst Peter is missing. And she's also pregnant, if you haven't noticed. So Mary Jane has a lot of pressure put onto her, and these 9 panels that kick off the story really helps you put into Mary Jane's set of mind. Mark Bagley's art, he's very good at capturing the right faces for the right moments, and this scene, though it's not like his best work, clearly shows that. And then we get cut into a battle scene, a battle of Secret Wars. Now, for those of you who don't know, Secret Wars was a massive event in Marvel, and this was actually this idea of Secret Wars was actually made to sell toys. It was a ploy by Marvel to sell more toys, and one of them back when this story was originally released was to give Spider-Man a new costume, and that's where we get the black suit. But anyway, we get this absolutely gorgeous shot of Battle World, where we see a bunch of superheroes and super villains fighting it off. It's important to note here that we see Reed Richards, who is clearly aged. He's got white hair, he's got a white beard, and I think this is very important because the idea of our heroes aging and our heroes developing is something which doesn't just affect our main characters, it affects every character in the universe. Age is something that, you cannot hide. And even though, yes, it is strange that Captain America is in this shot and he doesn't seem to have aged as well, but you can hide the fact that he's got white hair, I guess. So there's something. But and the idea of Reed Richards actually getting old along with Peter Parker is actually something that plays sort of in the story. We get this great scene of Peter Parker fixing his armor. By the way, I don't know where this Spider-Man armor comes from, and it's not used much. It's only literally for these 2 pages, but that costume is awesome. Like, I would really love to see more with that armor. Like, can that be an unlockable for the games? Like, I don't know. I just really like it. I also like how Mark Bagsley has drawn the older Peter Parker. He has this what's it called? Nightshade, when he's like a kind of beard kind of thing going on. Clearly showing that he's in his late 30s, and showing that maybe he's not getting enough sleep. Maybe he's letting the world get to him, and that is something that's reflected with his relationship with Reed Richards. As at one point in the dialogue, he even states it's like Reed Richards is like this warning haunting him. Reed Richards, he is like, he's saying like how proud he is of Peter about Peter Parker's Industries, which is actually a reference to Dan Slott's run, which is actually a lot recent, which I've learned. So I don't know what to say about the story, but it's implied here that Peter Parker is now a millionaire at this point. He is the owner of Parker Industries, and that Reed Richards looks at that and sees that is something to be proud of. But it seems like that's the only thing. He seems to be lost in his own mind, in a sense. Like, Reed Richards seems to be worrying about Peter Parker, but it seems more like he's like he says, like, I just want you to know that in case. And Peter's like, it's fine, honestly, because Peter seems to be slowing down. But as Peter thinks to himself, he's like, he sees Reed Richards, who has let his superhero life kind of get the better of him. We learn that Reed Richards is divorced, and he let his responsibility for the quote here is for Victor Von Doom for the planet, which kind of implies that he made some sort of deal, some sort of bargain with Victor Von Doom, and that would be really interesting. I would love to see a spin-off series with Reed Richards here. And what's really great is that, yeah, we get this little hint, this little idea of Reed Richards here and his own little plot and his own little storyline. But it affects Peter, our main character here, because he's looking at Reed and he's thinking, this is the person I could become. I could become this shell of a man if I let this superhero world get the better of me. But I have to carry all this responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. So Peter is at a crossroads. He doesn't know what to do. And he's also feeling the weight of how he's slowing down. He needs to keep pushing himself. He's aging. He's thing. And this is where we get a nice little cameo from Thor. Hooray! A massive Thor fan here. It's strange to see Hulk talking like he's normal, but that is something which is actually quite common for comic books, but that's a little tangent. And it's here where Peter learns that there is a device on Battle World where there seems to be fixing costumes. In the original storyline of Battle World, of Secret Wars, they find this device which fix clothes in, and I believe it was She-Hulk in the original story, or maybe it was the original Hulk like in this, points him in a direction, but Peter gets it mixed up and finds this ooze, which is actually the symbiote, and this is where he gets his new costume. We then cut then after Battleworld has ended in terms of this narrative. We learn that superheroes have been gone for at least 3 weeks. All of the main superheroes like the Avengers and Spider-Man, and that basically the world's gone to hell. But Peter, now wearing his black suit, and seems to be very determined. He seems to be going like straight home. He's like, no, that's it. I've got a new costume. I've got this great source, this great energy. I feel a bit strange. That might be some sort of alien reaction to the costume, but I need to get home. And it's here we get a really lovely scene of him having a reuniting with MJ, and MJ has to kind of like calm him down because, you know, he feels really bad that he wasn't there. And it's here that we learn that she gave birth to twins. I believe their names are Claire or Clark. I don't know how that name is pronounced. And Benjamin, which is obviously a reference to Uncle Ben. And basically, it's here where Peter learns that the world has gone crazy as well. We have this little subplot then, this little notion of how the world, because this is one of the things that that Life Story has also been tackling, and that is the idea of real world storylines interacting with the superhero environment, because Russia and America were at a Cold War, and now the superheroes were gone for about 3 weeks, and so Russia thought this would be a great time to basically show how stronger they are, so they start throwing missiles all over the place. Now, Vision, out of all people, gets a strange little scene in this story where he tries to deflect a bomb. It goes off in a city. He shortened the range so it didn't kill as much people, but it did kill a lot of people. And Vision is left standing in the middle of the blast, intangible, which means nobody can touch him. Peter goes to try and talk to him, try to reach to him, but Vision just seems to be standing there. Maybe it's something to do with the radiation. Maybe it's just witnessing the horror of many people's deaths. It's not quite clear. And I love how that scene is just sort of in there. Like, it's something which, like, heavy, it builds on the world building, but it's nothing too distracting. Now, here then it's when we have the infamous scene of Reed Richards basically telling Peter Parker that the symbiote is running amok, and he believes it's alive, and it's believed he's hurting Peter Parker. Now, we see on a newspaper that there is a Spider-Man copycat killer who's going around killing people with a gun. And Peter seems to be really annoyed by this and gets really angry. And Reed Richards is like, I think this costume is making you a bit mad. He's not making you, it's not making you think properly. And I've also been doing my tests. I believe the costume is alive. I believe it's a symbiotic creature. To where Peter actually reveals he knows. I'm not quite sure if this is part of the original storyline, but it's interesting. Now, I wished, this is something I'm going to have to tackle. I'll talk about it more later on, but I wished we had a little bit more scenes of Peter not controlling the costume around this point. I believe that we are missing a few scenes in which maybe Peter's maybe beating up some robbers, and the suit makes him a bit more aggressive, and he leaves them like as almost bloody corpses. But because we don't really get the feeling here of the Spider-Man costume consuming him like it did in the original story. But for what it's worth, for the two panels that we've got, for the short time that we have, it does its job very well, because Peter seems to be aggressive. He seems to be overthinking about his life, and is annoyed by the fact of this, that he's got these like babies, and the radio sponges was studying. He also at one point just ignores Reed Richards to go on the phone, where he learns that something has happened to Aunt May. So he rushes back home. Almost, he has some sort of like encounter with the cops. It seems like there's going to be like some sort of ruffle, but then nothing happens of it. And it learns then that Aunt May has had some sort of incident where she kind of zoned out, and she took the babies with her and kind of just stared around at the block. I don't know if this is implying that she has Alzheimer's, but the fact that such a real world problem, like Peter can't swing around and just save Aunt May. It's one of the things that makes Peter Parker such a great character, is that, yeah, he has superhero problems, but he also has real life problems which we can relate to, because it's such a sad storyline, but it's something that does need to be addressed. You know, Aunt May isn't getting any younger, and this is the type of story which this type of narrative is meant to, is meant to address. And I really like it here, and I feel like it's handled pretty okay here. It's something which actually is, it pushes the relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane even further, as we hear the babies crying in the background, and the relationship between them get more and more aggressive as Peter is like, what do you want me to do? I'm trying to save everyone, and now you want me to, I don't know what you want from me. And Mary Jane is just like, I'm looking after your babies, I'm looking after your auntie, and you don't even care for her. You don't even care for your auntie. You just expect me to clean up after you whilst you go doing your superhero. And that new costume, you've kind of become addicted to it. Again, this is something which I feel like should have been more stated in the narrative, but the fact that we're running on a short time schedule means that, like, you got to work with what you work with. Mark Bagsley's faces here, and I really like the angles he did. I love how throughout the scenes we get one angle of Peter with MJ like right at the front of the camera. We get one of them two basically shouting, and then there's one where they're in the same shot and they're very close up together, but their faces are facing the other way, even on different angles, and then leading into a shot in which they're far away in the room from each other, as Peter's got the black costume on, and he's basically stating it's like, I don't need it, and he puts on his red costume again to go fight crime because he's trying to prove himself. And he kind of leaves off in a tantrum. But as soon as he leaves, this is what I really like about this scene. As soon as he leaves, he has this argument with Mary Jane, and at the end of it, he's like, I need to get some air. That's what I need. As Mary Jane asks him, it's like, what do you need? And he goes, I need air. So he goes swinging off. As soon as that happens, he starts going, right, I shouldn't have done that. She was right. Like, at this moment I am terrible, and there's this war that is out of my control and I'm taking a part of, and it's affecting my family life. And then we get this twist. There is actually a copycat killer, which is a shock if you are familiar with the original storyline. For those of you who don't know, in the original storyline, from what I remember, it turns out that the symbiotic creature was actually making Peter Parker kind of sleepwalk in the Spider-Man costume, and Venom would fight crime as Spider-Man. But here they've actually pulled a twist in which the Spider-Man, the Venom, there's another copycat killer pretending to be the black-suited Spider-Man. Now, there's also another twist into this, as it turns out the person who's copycatting Peter Parker is Kraven the Hunter. This ties into a storyline with Kraven called Kraven Last Hunt from the 616 continuity, which is the other big plot line. Now, this is absolutely genius, putting these two plot lines together. Now let me explain. In the original storyline for the Venom, the idea of the Venom suit consuming Peter, the idea of Peter getting a bit more darker, and that is a very great idea and a great concept. But not to say that it's bad, but in the original story, the idea of him playing bad is kind of written in the way of it's like how it used to be, where it's like it's a flip of a coin, and that when Peter goes to sleep and the Venom symbiote takes over, that's the evil side, and it's not the conscious side of Peter, which, again, nothing wrong with that, but I love the fact here that they've made this, they've tied this with another giant storyline. And this is why. It means that all of the symbiotics influences on Peter in this story, all the times where it's turning him into a darker character, into a much more aggressive being, it's all Peter consciously. Does that make sense? Because it's here where he's Peter, he's shocked by the revelation of this, and Kraven, he's basically been pushed forward to capture Peter, because his country, Russia and America, are now at full-blown war, and now he doesn't feel like he has anything left in America but to basically capture the Spider-Man. And so he knocks him unconscious and buries him in the famous scene in which Peter is buried, which is another iconic scene from the 616. We get another scene then of Mary Jane, and she is in the house as she's looking after Aunt May and the kids. And then we hear a cracking noise as it turns out the symbiote, which Peter left in the house, is going absolutely nuts, which splashes us out. It finds Peter in the grave and resurrects him in the black suit with this almost monstrous appearance. The muscles seem to be consuming the body. We then see Kraven dressed up as Spider-Man in the black suit, beating up some thugs. Presumably he's taken up the mantle of Spider-Man, only for Peter to basically kick the living monkeys out of Kraven and showing the fangs. Basically, this is now Venom coming into fruition, as he basically is taunting him that he's going to kill him. He's gonna you buried me, you shot me, I am going to kill you. There's nothing stopping me. This is Peter Parker being pushed, because throughout this adventure, we've seen him like he can't deal with his family life. It's affecting him personally, and he's just fed up, and he's living in a body which is aging, which is getting him down. And conveniently, like, MJ sort of just appears. I mean, of course, she's aware of these events, but she got there pretty quick in terms of narrative. And that's what I want to state here. There's a massive issue with this issue. Issue with this issue. And it's something which I feel like is a problem in the three issues that we've tackled with. But I feel like here it is very prominent. And I think the reason why it's so prominent here is that this story, as it's been portrayed, is been so good. I've been really invested in this. But there's one issue, one problem, one massive problem that is stopping me from considering this like amazing. It is way too short. This is something that should be its own miniseries, 6 issues at least. And we're doing this in one? In one? Are you serious? Like, a great example is the idea of Venom, the symbiote, and Peter Parker. We never get a true feeling of it taking over Peter. We get a few people mentioning that he's gotten addicted to it and it's affecting him personally. But apart from really the last scene in which he is pushing by Craven to the extreme, do we ever really see a scene like that? Mostly comes from the script, which, as a comic book, show and don't tell. But what can you do? They've set up this great idea of Marvel time being non-existent, and they've decided to do this each story its own issue. It should be its own story for like a mini series. Like, we should have had each issue that we've tackled with should have been a mini series at least. And I know I'm probably sound a lot more aggressive than I intend. I want to state, this is easily my favorite issue that we've tackled with. If it wasn't for this clearly massive issue, which has really affected the story, I wouldn't have any problems with it. I'm really invested in this. I love the creative decision to mix these two storylines together in this way, in a way that actually complements each story, each idea of both the symbiote story and the Craven's Last Hunt. But it's way too short. I wouldn't say it's crammed. I think the story runs at a natural pace for a single issue. But that's the thing. This story should not be a single issue. This should be something that is dealt with through at least what could be counted as, say, 2 hours of reading. Like, it's absolutely mental. And like, this finale, this scene ends with Peter like going, right, I realized, Mary, I love you, you need to do it. And she kind of hits him with this sonic blast. Now, Peter mentions earlier on in the story that he came up with a way to remove the symbiote. And it's just the dramatic thing. But we never really get the feeling here. She just kind of zaps him and the symbiote's gone. And then we cut into a really great scene of Peter just like sitting in his chair, almost looking like Uncle Ben in his usual clothing, and he just looks around in his house and just can't handle the fact that the girls. I just now realised that they're moving. Like MJ is moving her stuff out. She has people moving her stuff out. I never realised that. That's strange. And Peter's basically left to look after Aunt May by himself. So whether this impacts his decision as Spider-Man in later issues, we'll just have to see. Now, this issue also ends on a cliffhanger, in which Craven is like, right, I'm done. He's about to commit suicide, only for what appears to be the Venom symbiote taking control of him. Now, I've going from previous cliffhangers in this series, I'm not building my hopes up, but that is a very interesting way to end this story. So that is issue 3, Our Secret War. Easily the best issue so far. Very little complaints, but my complaint that I do have really hinders my enjoyment of this story. It's way too short, and it affects almost every scene that this story is trying to tell. And like, I don't know. I know I probably sound more aggressive, more angry than I am. Like, I'm actually. It's just, I was really getting into this, and the idea of taking these two iconic Spider-Man stories, these ones in particular, in the way that Chip Zdarsky has written them, is such a great idea. And then to go, right, we'll just do it in this one issue, done. It's a wasted opportunity. It's a crying shame. And like, it's funny because even though this is easily the one I've enjoyed the most, it's the one I've gotten angry the most as well. It's very strange. So there you go. That is the Spider-Man issue 3 of the Life Story event. Join me next time where we will head into the 90s and we'll see Peter in his 40s. That'll be interesting. So I'll see you all next time on the vlog series. Ta-ra.